I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and it's about time we had a bit of a sit down to talk about an update on the new Toyota Land Cruiser Prado, the 250 series Land Cruiser, which will be launching here in Australia in mid-2024. Well, we're almost there, and there's more that we know now about the Prado, about what it will have and what it won't have in Australia. The first topic I want to go to though is the question of the Prado hybrid. Now we already know that for Australia there'll be just one engine at launch. It's an updated version of the outgoing Prado's 2.8 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, except the Prado will have the Hilux's new 48 volt mild hybrid system as standard. Outputs are the same as the outgoing Prado, 150 kilowatts of power, 500 Newton meters of torque, and a full-time four-wheel drive system. All pretty familiar from the current Prado. And I've got to be honest, on first glance, I kind of looked at that and was a little bit disappointed. You look at the styling of the new Prado, you look at the interior, I've sat in it myself, it's a much better car, a much plusher car than the old outgoing model. Kind of expected that it would have a new engine, which is what the Americans have received. A 2.4 litre turbocharged petrol 4-cylinder engine with a hybrid system. Much bigger power, 243 kilowatts of power, over 600 Newton meters of torque as well. So certainly leaving the diesel behind in terms of outright numbers. Now, this engine hasn't been confirmed for Australia, and we now are starting to understand the reasons why. Around the traps, I'm reading a lot of stories speculating that the Prado hybrid is only minutes away from being confirmed for Australia. And I'm just not sure that that's true. This morning, I was able to sit down with Sean Hanley from Toyota Australia, who's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at the company. And he's given some interesting statements around the Prado hybrid for Australia, which is mainly that the American hybrid, the standard engine for America's Prado, a vehicle they just call the Land Cruiser, is potentially not quite up to the level of capability that Australians require from their vehicle. And I think this cryptic statement actually incorporates two factors. The first one is towing. Even though we've stuck with the old 2.8 diesel here in Australia, it can tow 3.5 tonnes across the range. The 2.4 turbo petrol hybrid is only good for 27, 22 kilos. So you're quite a way off in terms of your max towing capacity, even if plenty of people think you shouldn't be towing 3.5 tonnes with a Prado anyway. The capability just isn't there. But the clincher is actually the fuel economy. Now, here in Australia, Toyota hybrids are extremely popular. They account for almost half of Toyota's annual sales, at least up to this point of 2024. That's pretty amazing. But the Prado hybrid isn't actually capable of a big cut to fuel consumption in the way that we expect from RAV4s or Klugers or Camrys, what have you. They all cut 30 or 40% of their fuel consumption by going to hybrid. But the Prado, you actually don't cut fuel consumption at all. That's what it looks like on paper. Officially, the diesels use 7.9 litres per 100 Ks in Australia, produce about 209 grams per kilometre of CO2 on paper. The hybrid obviously hasn't been rated for Australia because it's not sold here. But in the US, the fuel consumption is about 10 litres per 100 Ks, and the CO2 is around 230 grams per kilometre. America's emissions rating system is more pessimistic than the one here in Australia. So call it similar, call it about line ball, the turbo petrol hybrid is not using less fuel than the diesel. Why is that important? Well, Australia is about to move to the new Vehicle Emissions Standards Framework of Laws, the NVES. What Toyota will be looking for is hybrid vehicles that help it reduce its overall fleet average emissions. If you breach the limit in the NVES, car manufacturers will have to pay a penalty for every gram per kilometre above the CO2 limit that they are. Now, if you're a big manufacturer like Toyota that sells tens of thousands of vehicles, hundreds of thousands in Australia, then the penalties can really add up to a very, very large number. So I don't think Toyota Australia is going to lift too much of a finger to bring a Prado hybrid to our market that wouldn't even help them reduce that national fleet average of CO2 emissions across all of their cars sold, especially when you consider that America's Prado hybrid is way down on towing compared to the Prado diesel, even if it is well up on power and refinement. But then there's the last big factor, and that's that to actually justify starting to build the Prado hybrid in right-hand drive, Mr. Hanley says that Toyota would need to sell a large number of Prado hybrids in Australia each year. And he gave the number of Klugers sold in this country as a guide, which is about 12,000. So let's say Toyota Australia needed to sell 10,000 Prado hybrids each year in our market just to justify building the vehicle in right-hand drive. Well, last year, Toyota only sold 21,000 Prados, a little bit less. That's quite a few examples, but 10,000 would be 1 in 2 Australians choosing the hybrid over a diesel Prado, choosing the vehicle that can't tow as much and doesn't actually bank too much of a fuel consumption difference or anything at all, and would probably be more expensive. Now, don't get me wrong, I reckon the turbo petrol hybrid Prado is probably a sweeter drive. We know it's got a lot more power, it's got a lot more torque, of course it would be quieter, it might be a little bit more frugal in urban areas. I'd probably quite like to drive one. But the economic arguments, I don't think, are there to support the idea that 1 in 2 Aussie Prado buyers are going to opt for the hybrid. It wouldn't surprise me if Toyota Australia was canvassing other hybrid options for the Prado. Toyota remains committed to adding a hybrid to each of its model lineups here in Australia by 2030, but that's still 5.5 years away. There's quite a lot of time left. It wouldn't shock me if Toyota was trying to make something like a full hybrid diesel powertrain work, or perhaps the turbo petrol hybrid can be made more efficient over time. Plus, we know that the TNGA-F platform that underpins the Prado is capable of being a plug-in hybrid or even a fully electric vehicle. So Toyota has various options available to it to make the Prado genuinely more efficient and lower CO2 for our market. But until it's able to actually get that CO2 number down, it wouldn't surprise me if Toyota Australia is not in a big rush to launch the 2.4 litre turbo petrol hybrid in our market for this vehicle. So, with that in mind, what are we getting in the Prado? Photographs and videos of the Australian specification Prado are pretty thin on the ground. We've only received confirmed photographs of Australia's version of the Altitude and also the top-spec Kakadu. But we do have pricing and basic specifications for each of the 5 grades that Toyota Australia will offer in our market, where the Prado does everything from being a workhorse at the GX, which is priced from $72,500 before on-road costs, through to a pretty plush family hauler in the Kakadu model, which is just under $100,000 before on-road costs. The price hikes on the new Prado are very considerable. As I mentioned, the range does kick off with a true workhorse, the $72,500 GX, which has manual fabric seats and really none of the plush features inside that you'd expect further up the range. But we are seeing things like Toyota's full safety suite becoming standard across the range at this point, just as you'd expect. I do think that the base Prado could actually look quite cool with perhaps black bumpers, but we haven't actually seen one yet. Moving on to the GXL, that steps up in price to $79,990 before on-road costs. It's no longer offered with a luxury package that gives you leather, so vinyl seats are the order of the day for the GXL. It is, however, adding heating and cooling to the front seats, so many of those aspects of the luxury package have simply been made standard now. You're also picking up features like 8-way power adjustment for the driver's seat, wireless smartphone charging, additional USB-C ports in the back, and reversing AEB, a feature that really should be standard across the whole range. Not sure why the GX misses out on such a critical safety element. From there, it's a step up to the VX, which will be a sweet spot for a lot of Australian families. The VX basically sits where the old Kakadu did in terms of pricing, at $87,400 before on-road costs. It starts to pick up some nice features like adaptive variable suspension, constantly adaptive dampers. You've got 5 modes in your driving selection. You've got multi-terrain monitor for seeing what's happening around you off-road, 20-inch wheels, bi-LED headlights, leather instead of vinyl on the seats, a JBL stereo, and a big 12-inch digital instrument cluster, plus a cool box. Like I said, I suspect the VX will be a bit of a sweet spot. Then it's a bit of a diagonal jump to the Altitude. That model costs $92,700 and will almost certainly be the best looking Prado. It's the one with the pumped up retro inspired styling that is seen on most of the American spec Prados, but we still get rectangular lights rather than the circle lights that you can get in the US. The Altitude gets 18-inch wheels instead of the larger units, a locking rear diff, all-terrain tyres. You do get a porthole sunroof, blacked out exterior trim, digital rear view mirror, heated steering wheel, a head-up display, and the option of two-tone paint, although that'll set you back another $1,700 or thereabout. Finally, there's the Kakadu. And I'm not entirely sure what Toyota's done in terms of the massive body-coloured treatment of various panels here. To my eyes, not a great looking vehicle from the start, but it might just be this paint colour. It extends that sunroof out to a panoramic one. You've got illuminated side steps, heated and ventilated seats for the second row, heated steering wheel, digital rear view mirror, and torque sensing limited slip rear differential. And that's the one with the big headline price, $99,990 before on-road costs, aka what Volkswagen charges you for the new Touareg Elegance with air suspension and a V6 diesel. And I think the elephant in the room is just how expensive the Prado is. Certainly the styling is there, Toyota's reputation is there, their service network is there, but still maintaining that 48 volt, 4-cylinder diesel in a segment where there's a number of V6 options is bold. What do you think about the pricing of the Prado? And what do you think about these developments on the hybrid? Do let me know down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.